I can either just go move to the woods and build a cabin and live off the grid, which actually sounds appealing, or I can just accept this reality and try to figure out how to navigate this very real future that I can see. Present, it's not even future, it's present and future, and try to learn how to adapt, and who knows where that will lead.
Matt, welcome back to the show. You were episode 50. Super glad to have you back. Can you briefly reintroduce yourself to all the new people that have listened for we're like past 150 now. So this has been 100 episodes later. Can you reintroduce yourself and we'll get started from there?
That's awesome. Congratulations, first of all. That's 150 episodes, even 100 more since my first one. That's awesome. Not a lot of people are going to be doing that. So props to you for carrying the torch for so long. My name is Matt. I go by MDS on the internet. I have a weird obsession with trying to get the absolute most difficult username across every platform. But I'm a designer turned educator, now turning into a CEO, trying to figure out how to run a design education business that is all really based on the foundational principles of design. And so started as graphic designer, transitioned to UI and product designer, and now here we are.
Oh man, I don't know, fanboyed too much. Matt, you've been very pivotal like in my whole career, to be honest. Since I was in college, and I'll try not to repeat what I said in the last episode, which is basically the same thing, but here's like the cliff notes why I'm excited to have Matt back on is you talk about, oh yeah, like really impressive. You did 150 podcast episodes. I'm like, I've watched all of your public work for almost a decade now. And so like you just like consistently iterating over the last, I've been following you for 10 years because it's been 10 years. So from basically the age of my career so far, and just seeing you like, not like striving for perfection, like having like reinventing yourself when you found like a better way, made it really easy for me to have a side project because it's just like, oh, like over a long enough time horizon, all those rough edges get smoothed out. And the biggest example is the room behind you, which is like your private studio that you built outside your house. Followed the whole build on Instagram.
Nice.
Yeah, and it was just cool to see because like it started when you launched Shift Nudge, and I'm the third beta tester in 2020 to graduate from it. And so I bought low, and it's definitely appreciated since then. And so like, sweet, like nice education investment. I bought low, and seeing the success of the business, and then like, just you kind of like building your life, having a life outside of design, seeing like, assuming like the economics of it, of like, I've just been super happy for you, super really like admiring like how you've turned the career to success into like just living a life that you want to live. And it's not just all about design. Your content's not all about design. So just wanted to call that out. My first discussion prompt actually came from Config, which your last Config talk, which was I think maybe a couple years ago now. And I'm going to ask people to watch it because my testimonial for Shift Nudge is shown on the big stage. That
hey, you got your face shown on like in front of
I know
thousands of people.
Yeah, I know. I saw. I'm like, holy shit! Like,
maybe I should have reached out to the people I shared first. I didn't even think about that actually.
No, yeah, I was flattered that I made the cut, so it's totally fine. And now everyone knows I did Shift Nudge. At least I watched it. But your talk was really awesome because it talked about how like Shift Nudge wasn't your first attempt at making a course. And like you've attempted to do a lot of like side projects over the years, long before I discovered you. And the whole premise from that episode was like, there's no such thing as waste, right? You talked about, oh, when I tried this project, I learned these lessons that like helped me in this next project and this next one. And then eventually like Shift Nudge wasn't this 2-year project you did and you hit it out of the park. Like you had, Brandon Sanderson is a very prolific author. He has this like writing class that he shares on YouTube where he like goes to his college and he talks about writing. And he talks about how, hey, if you guys want to be a professional author, you need to write 5 books first before your first like successful book. So could you talk a little bit about like that message that you shared?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the talk that I gave at Config was really just my journey of side projects and how they can help shape your career and how they ultimately led to the career I now find myself in. And so I've been designing for my entire career. I'm very fortunate to have studied design and started working in design and continue to work in design because there's many people who successfully come from other career paths that are completely unrelated to design and then find themselves there. And likewise for many other college degrees or whatever, it can be very fragmented in terms of what you study or what you do or what you end up doing. So I'm very fortunate that I've been able to just do design and the adjacent things. And so because of that, I always draw on just the foundational principles of even the design process and how that might map to the scientific process. You've got a hypothesis, you start experimenting, you start tweaking, you learn, and then you draw conclusions. And I think there's something really interesting about boiling that down to a simple process that can just be repeated. The scientific experiment or the scientific method that we all learn is not too different from designing and getting better at design. And so I think the same thing applies to I've got an idea for a side project. I'm going to try to do this and I put it out there and it's easy to I don't know, maybe hold yourself to a high standard and think it might be a failure. And sometimes it actually does feel like a failure. And many of the ones that I shared did feel like a failure. And there are plenty of times where I was very anxious or nervous or on the verge of tears or worried or whatever. Those emotions are real. I don't want to discount that things aren't hard, but in hindsight, you can always look back and be like, oh, that helped me do this. And now I can see that I kept going. And then I did this and that led to this. And so that's essentially what the talk was about. And that's also how I like to approach problems in the future as well, because it's easy after I've been in the industry for so long. If I get nervous about something, which I still do, I can look back and remember like it actually worked out. It might not have been exactly the way I thought it was going to or the way I wanted it to, but ultimately I still have something to show for it. And I'm still able to provide for my family and live in a house. I'm not homeless somewhere. I didn't go to prison or no one's hurt. So I think these are like easily catastrophic examples of what might happen if something goes completely wrong. But usually it's going to work out somehow. And having an idea of that process from a fundamental level sometimes just helps me think through the scenario and what might happen. And same is true for side projects or even actual design or whatever. And I'm now trying to learn how to apply that same process to even designing systems within my business. And it's hard. I'm struggling because I'm doing new things even now and I'm trying to learn new skills. But that's the ethos of that talk. Really just keep learning, keep brute forcing your way and keep learning and keep applying what you learned.
A podcast, like I've been connecting a lot more dots. First off, I'll call out just doing like a large body of work, like doing this podcast for 8 years. I'm like sure in the moment when you were doing those side projects back in the day that you didn't feel like, yeah, it's all part of the process. Like it's all going to work out. I almost quit the podcast. Like the first 4 years, it was all my producing to get like people on the show for 4 years. And then like year 4, the dynamic shifted and now I get mostly guests brought to me. And that took 4 years. And then even then for the next couple of years, I was like, should I quit the show? I got what I wanted from it, which was to break into the industry. What is it? What's the purpose of doing this now? And it reminds me of like, you might just be like the design version of this, but there's a Swedish supercar designer, Christian von Koenigsegg, and there's actually a really good episode on the podcast Founders about him, but he's this guy that just wanted to make like supercars and he like found his thing. He knew what his thing was. And then for I think a decade before he found any success, just kept making attempts to break into this industry and make cars and like burning capital. But he never got, I wouldn't say like he probably felt discouraged, but his whole like mantra was like, if there was a failure, he's okay, like moving on. And now we'll just do the next one, next one. Like it was this obsession to the path, right? And now I have realized that if you like doing it for the sake of doing it is like enough.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. I think there's I think there's a book called The Infinite Game. And a lot of people in the business sense they will refer to the infinite game often as, I'm doing this because I'm in the game. I just love being in the game. And it's not necessarily the idea of, I'm going to retire, move to Mexico, drink margaritas on the beach. That is, I don't know, maybe some people's idea of arriving, but if someone's just real, like if you just enjoy the game of work or whatever you find yourself in, it's incredibly privileged place to be in. But also if you find yourself there, I feel like you have a superpower where I genuinely enjoy solving these problems. I genuinely enjoy the work I'm doing and the impact that I'm having. And it just makes a big difference. And it makes a big difference in terms of like how high your willingness is to continue pushing forward, whether it's recording a podcast because it has to do with your job or your interview or the industry, and meeting new people. There's intrinsic benefits to meeting people all the time, talking to people, and people hearing your voice. It's naturally going to lead you to better opportunities and more interesting conversations. And I think there's something really cool about continuing to like open yourself up, whether it's through a side project and putting your work online, or having a podcast and putting your voice and your thoughts and your conversations online. It's like this idea of, if I'm just always in my office collecting my own thoughts and working in my own little cave, I become a pond growing algae. But if I'm putting stuff out there and I'm talking to people and I'm promoting and I'm trying to have this like flow of water versus a collected pool of water that's more like a river. And so I think when I think of side projects or doing work and how that affects other people, I think those are some of the things that I try to think about. I feel like I'm getting a little off topic, but it's connected.
Yeah. This is a Thinking Out Loud podcast, and I'm going to tie it to like another idea. I really like the water metaphor. There's a book called The Go-Giver Leader, and it talks about like the Latin. It's like one of those business allegory books. So they use a story to teach like principles about leadership. And one of them was like the actual Latin word meaning of influence is like flow.
Nice.
And think of it like water flows downhill because of gravity, and it like the best leaders have gravity, and that your job is to generate gravity, which I would say is like content or whatever, and then taking like your pond, turning it into a reservoir, and then building the infrastructure for water to make it easy for people to flow to you. And it's the idea that it's hard for people to follow you if you're not leading, and the act of sharing your work, participating in a community gives people the option to opt in or out to you. And yeah, I know it's like esoteric, but for me, it's just being like discoverable has been foundational to my career. And then
Yeah.
it's led to me like meeting I didn't just get to do Shift Nudge, but then I had this really easy infrastructure to be like, hey Matt, I really like the course. Can you actually come on the show? And so I got like more out of that experience
For sure.
because I made it easy to talk to you.
That's awesome.
So I made this observation. So I did this interview with a former recruiter. Like her whole business was about how to look for a job in the age of AI. And she was talking about how like the age of gaming your keywords in resumes is over because of ATS applicant tracking systems are deterministic. And so the keyword gaming doesn't matter. You could now have like Perplexity or any like deep research tool do a complete background check on somebody.
Right.
And so right after that interview, I did a deep research report on me. Hey, who is this guy? Fit these like talent frameworks. And I obviously wasn't planning on this when I started the podcast, but now I'm like so grateful that I started early in my career because now I have this huge body of work.
Yeah.
Where like the outputs of those deep research reports are really good. Like I have a catalog of IP.
Yeah.
And so how have you been coaching designers? What's changed in the Shift Nudge? Like I guess in the Shift Nudge curriculum of like how AI has impacted the career prospects of designers, like how to reposition, like how do you reposition yourself as a designer looking for jobs?
So one of the big changes that I made since the early days is just running regular live calls with the students. So at least every other week, I'm on a call and we're discussing their work or discussing current tools because it's really, I made a Figma 101 course in 2024, and that was released right before Figma like completely changed their entire UI. And I was like, dang it, I just recorded all these videos. Fortunately, they actually pared it back and there's not a big discrepancy now. And so those Figma 101 videos still hold up. A lot of the same features are going to change, but tools just change so fast. I think there is value in like teaching tools. Here's how you can use the tool. And there's probably a lot of people, that have done well, like teaching Figma or teaching Sketch or teaching Photoshop or teaching Adobe Illustrator. But usually the shelf life of that teaching is much more like temporal. And so I've tried to, as much as possible, I've tried to avoid that as like one of the foundations of Shift Nudge. And so I really want to, and it's still some things that I'm processing, especially now in the age of AI. I haven't built any, here's how to design with AI curriculum because it's all changing. There's 20,000 new tools. Figma's introducing AI stuff. There's like Magic Path, Subframe, Variant, Paper, Claude Code, Cursor, like you name it.
Yeah.
There's so many. And so I'm just like looking at all this stuff, trying to figure out how to make sense of it. And also building my own products. And last year, I really went heads down into AI world and really learned how to wrangle code with Cursor. And this is before skills existed as an idea. And I was
For the listener, could you like, I don't want to interrupt your rap, but could you like explain skills to listeners really quick?
So not drinking from the fire hose of AI on X like I am every day. Unintentionally, a lot of times, I just open up X and there's an articles on how to use Claude Code or whatever. Anthropic is the company that makes Claude, and they just raised $30 billion. They just announced, and their company is at a $360 billion valuation, something along those lines. And so Claude.ai is one thing where you can just chat like a competitor to ChatGPT, but you can also download Claude, or you can run Claude Code in your terminal, which sort of gives AI like root level access to your machine, which sort of sounds scary, but you can have it organize my downloads folder in a way that makes sense. And you can give it permission to do stuff on your machine. You can also have it, there's just so many things that you can do, like tap into browsers. And without going too deep, I think it was like October or November of last year, the team at Anthropic introduced skills. And so skill is really just a markdown file with a little bit of information at the top that says, this is what the skill is. Say it's like, this is my podcast prep skill. It's going to help me come up with some questions to ask the interviewer that I'm about to record my podcast with. And Claude can skim the surface of that skill file and know, oh, okay, this is what this skill helps me do. So if I'm chatting with Claude Code and I'm like, I need to prepare my interview questions for this show I'm going to do with MDS, and it is, oh, I can see that I have a skill over here in my repository. Let me read the whole thing. And then it's, oh, here's my, like, the way that I ask interview questions. And it might just be instructions for how it can help me in the future. And so you could imagine if you had these types of skills for writing React code or coding literally anything. There's marketing skills, there are front end design skills, and any kind of thing that if you've ever told ChatGPT or Claude, imagine you are the world-class recruiter and you're going to help me fill out my resume. Anytime you've ever tried to prompt your way into getting ChatGPT or Claude to help you in a certain way can now be done with these files that are called skills. And it's just a more efficient way of not needing to prompt every single thing. It's like, let me just tap into this library of how I want you to do things and help me do things in this way now. Is that anything?
Yeah, like I would say that AI has been designed around like how the human brain works, right? And like real example, right, is me taking the Shift Nudge course 6 years ago was basically configuring my skill files in layout, typography, the rules of thumb. That's what Shift Nudge is really great at, is that you've codified like the first principles of what makes good, usable, like visually stunning UIs. And once I internalized those lessons after 6 months, a little bit longer than Claude Code could probably make skills for the same material, then it was just like automatic. Like whenever I needed to do a design task, like my brain in the subconscious would go to that skill file and be like, a pixel grid, right? Or whenever you taught about like custom quick key configurations to your students, right? And it's basically just training an employee on an SOP. It's like an SOP doc for Claude.
Yes, 100%. And the thing that's interesting too is even if you feed, and I think this is fascinating because there's just, it's like it is literally a digital brain, artificial intelligence versus human intelligence. And the skill files, they're good at getting directionally correct. And especially things that are like absolutely binary. Is this the way you write an HTML link or is it not? It's like definitely right and wrong. It's very easy to use a skill file for something like that to make it objectively right or wrong. Whereas design there are some right and wrong skills that exist, but there's also a bunch of rules that could be broken intentionally. And that's where it's like, it's harder to get AI to be a really good designer because it's just more difficult. There's more nuance. There's more gray area than black and white. And so I think you can get it directionally correct. And I think a lot of people are really trying to infuse their, like, do it like this. And it's going to get better. I do think that we're in the age of AI still not great at design is maybe like the age where like it couldn't generate photos of hands. There's like a million fingers in all the photos. And so maybe it gets to a point where it's like, it's just banging out good designs and we're like, actually, that's pretty good. I don't need to adjust it that much. But there's always going to be, it's like, why does it need to be a list instead of a card? Why does it need to show it now instead of earlier? And there's going to be some sort of judgment at some level that someone's going to have to make. And who is that person going to be? Probably a designer. And so I think this leads to the idea of, it's like, you need to learn those skills and learn how to implement them with AI, not just learning how to make me a landing page, design this product, because I'm not saying one goes before the other, because I think people coming up now, I remember growing up without the internet. I remember growing up without an iPhone. Now my 11-year-old amazing at using the iPhone because he always existed in the world where iPhones existed. And when they get into high school and graduate, like ChatGPT is just baked into his brain. Like, why don't we just take a picture of that algebra problem and see what ChatGPT says? Which is exactly how I help my kids with algebra because I was an art major. But there is this like interesting nuance between, okay, how much do I learn myself versus how much do I rely exclusively on AI? I don't know that one needs to come before the other because the way I use AI in a lot of ways is if I run into a problem, I'm like, help me understand why you're doing this instead of that. And it's, oh, when we're writing React, you need to import these modules this way. And I'm like, why can't you just blah, blah, blah. And so I'm trying to learn about this also while using skills and build my own fleshy skills in my own brain to continue working through some of this, because I think there's going to be a divergence where the person who doesn't use AI is just simply not as effective as the person who learned how to use it. But then there's also going to be a divergence of I'm using AI all the time. And this other person is, I learned a lot of things before AI existed and I use AI. And now I know more than you and I use AI. And this other person is just fully reliant on AI and they don't know much. There's this interesting conundrum that's like causing this divide now where it's going to be harder to learn things because AI is so instant that it makes it like painful to sit down and read something and like actually learn it yourself. So I've forgotten what we were even talking about, but that's like where we find ourselves now.
I think that's a really good answer of, I don't know, I'm drinking from the fire hose. There's a lot. Like, I feel the same way. Like, I want to like rage quit every day of like, another Claude Code article, right?
How many Claude Code articles can we write?
Yeah. Apparently everybody can now because
Infinite.
Claude Code's really good at writing. Yeah. And, but yeah, you capture like a sentiment of, there's like this, the host of Dirty Jobs. I think it's like Mark Rowe or Micro or something like that.
Yeah,
and
Micro, I think that's his name.
yeah, I remember like a very long time ago, he said, usually when you see a lot of people going one direction, the best thing to do is go the opposite direction, right? Be different. Zig versus zag, to use that term. But here's like because I feel the same way. I'm like, I'm getting to learning saturation of, okay, here's like the primitives of Claude Code, which tie very closely to how the human brain works, even though we might not be aware of it. And that you can, eventually got to a point where I could be like tool agnostic.
Yeah.
You know what? But you want to know the thing that like Shift Nudge, even though I don't do a lot of stuff from scratch anymore, you want to know like what Shift Nudge really set me up for success on in the age of AI? It's the vocabulary you gave me. So in Greek, there's 4 different words for knowledge. They're just types of knowledge. And there's like technical knowledge. It's called techni, ironically. Not ironically, but it's called techni. And it's like craft knowledge. Like you actually have how to manipulate materials to get an outcome. And then there's another one that is like YouTube knowledge, like knowledge of something. And like you've heard of it, there's like that. Yeah, it's, hey, I read a headline. And then in between that is like really like just having conceptual knowledge. Like you have a concept of it, but like you couldn't execute it. You know enough about React to be dangerous. But before AI, I guess the stock price of like technical knowledge was super high because you need that person. And it's still high. Like I can't use Claude Code to replace my car mechanic. It's like there is like, real things that need to like have real people. But what I've noticed with design is that like it's not going to be a differentiator to be like good at the tools anymore. Like I think like when I say like how I frame it is the cost of agency has gone down for a lot of things because you look at Industrial Revolution or no, like Middle Ages, right? This is like my whole thesis. Like Middle Ages, what was the most expensive asset? Security. And so if you had an army and you could like be ruthless, like you became king, right? And then industrial revolution happened, and you could see these aristocratic families like start losing power because the world got like relatively more secure, and then power shifted to who has capital. So you got the JP Morgans and those and Rockefellers, they became powerful. And then the database revolution, like now you could create computers that like know how to analyze stocks and trade and stuff. This is pre-internet. And so you get the Larry Ellisons, Microsofts, they become powerful. And people don't know this, but like Bill Gates, like totally slept on the internet. Like he didn't win. Like he left before the internet really got big. And then the internet, and so like in the database age, you're hoarding insight because you need to buy like all those server racks. It's expensive. And then the internet age gave everyone access to everyone's servers, so you don't need to do servers anymore. So what do you hoard? Agency. The MBAs make all the strategic decisions, and then all the white collar jobs are about collecting information, analyzing it, and then synthesizing reports for the leadership to make the big calls. And like the cost of like collecting that information, the technical knowledge was how you moved ahead in your career. Now, this macro trend that's happening is, oh, I don't need to be good at finance to run basic financial reports. Whenever I get blocked on like reconciling my books for my business, I just I'm in like Dia browser or whatever. I could like ask like, hey, can you help me understand like this thing? And it doesn't replace the accountant. Like I still talk to my accountant, but I'm asking him more like strategic questions.
Yeah.
Because I can unblock myself if I'm curious enough. And so the cost of like technical knowledge in a lot of things, and I would even argue design, has gone down. But the value of like conceptual knowledge, just having a vocabulary, is like super high. And so how I'm repositioning myself is because like even before AI, think of like when you're going to Claude Code and creating skills, and I'm more just speaking to like guests and stuff,
Yeah.
right? It is you're basically talking to your employees, and you might have never done this before, and you are giving them like a SOP, which is like a standard operating procedure of what do you do when the customer gets mad or wants a refund, right? It's like FAQs really.
Yeah.
And Shift Nudge, when I was like assigned designers as a design lead, I was able to articulate with very precise vocabulary what wasn't working in their designs. I was able to jam with them. I stole your jam style. Like when I was part of the beta group, so I got Matt actually looked at my work and did a screen recording of him like editing my files.
Yeah. A
And
lot
you
of
just
it.
feel
too.
like, yeah, like, man, like definitely bought low. That was a huge privilege. But you had this, you could articulate in very like precise language, like subject, object, verb, like this, like the spacing is off for X and X reason. And that made me good at delegating to other designers. And so when AI came around and they got good, and also have 7 years of doing a podcast. I've automated a lot of my podcast editing because I'm the editor in chief. Like I could go to like Claude Code and be like, here's the skill is like creating like a profile or a guest bio. Like here's the editorial style guide.
Yeah.
And then I want you to send it to me. I'll look it up on my phone in Obsidian. I'll see like what you striked out. Okay, it looks good, or it doesn't. I'll leave my notes in it. But you're becoming like the cost of agency to do director level things has gone way down. Like you could go up a level.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's how I see it. Is like there's nothing differentiating about Claude Code articles right now. And so I'm actually I'm like reading books again. I'm building my vocabulary. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I think that's both reassuring in a way in this AI economy that we're like venturing into. And it's also scary in another way for people who are just like entry level. And I think that the way that I'm viewing it is, okay, the designer's role is no doubt shifting and has been going through a shift. Not so much as I think organizations and people still want well-designed products. I don't think that's necessarily going to go away. And having someone build it with AI or prompt it into existence or whatever, it never truly mattered how the sausage was made. We just wanted that sausage. And so I think now it's just it's made faster, and what are the tools to get it there, and how can we still ensure the quality is still there. And but the quality is improving, but nothing is like automatically happening. There's still someone making the thing. And so you want the one who's making the thing to at least have some sort of idea about who they're serving, what they're trying to do. And there's just so much nuance and context for that to come to fruition. And I think it's liberating because we can just build our own tools now if we have the know-how and the willingness to put in the work. But building something on our own is a lot different than building something for 100,000 people to all use at once and to support them and so I think there's a big difference between, oh my gosh, software companies are cooked. Like I just vibe coded this Facebook clone in 5 minutes. Look at it. And it's like, okay, I don't think that's quite the same thing, but it's cool that you could do that and run it on your local machine. And so my big focus now is just rethinking, okay, what are still the first principles of design, and maybe not only design, but just like building interfaces. In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, interface design, but now also interface building. Because I think I'm looking at like the AI world as three personas. One is the pioneer. The next one, which is quite large, is the builder. And then the third one, which is like the consumer. And I feel like the pioneers are the people at Anthropic or people at Cursor that are building these intelligence models and these harnesses that kind of give it to us in a certain way. But like the builders are now the developers and the designers, and we're all in this big chasm of building. Designers are over here and builders over here, and we're like converging slowly. And some are still better at like infrastructure and setup and code. And why would you use effect here in React, and designers over here? What does that mean? But a lot of it's starting to be irrelevant because some of the tools are getting so good. And so in my mind, that's how I'm viewing it, as like pioneer, builder, consumer. Like my mom is benefiting from Google search AI summaries, but she's not building apps, and never would she ever consider building a personal app to help her manage her grocery list. And neither would my wife, but my kids might. And interestingly enough, because they're growing up with AI, maybe they would do that. But I still think there's just this huge chasm now versus designer developer. It's more like builder with different flavors of builder. And so I'm trying to think, how does design and the foundational principles of design still play for now this bigger group of people? Because now not only do designers start designing, builders are using maybe potentially using designers less because we're all sort of builders. And I'm just thinking in my mind, how can I institute foundational knowledge transfer and building that vocabulary, like you said, for these types of people? And maybe there's a sliver of, here's some of the snapshot of tools and how they exist now and how you can use them. But it's almost like I want to teach, this is how you use tools. This is how you learn to use tools. And this is how you move into a new tool. And you need to learn how to learn to use a tool versus just learning a tool. So that's the vocabulary that I'm trying to build right now, and the AI native curriculum that I'm thinking through for Shift Nudge.
Yeah, I think that's like awesome. And let me know when that happens, because then I'll jump into the Notion project to re-up on the updates and stuff. Because it's like, yeah, what's the next abstraction now that a lot of tasks aren't like as necessary anymore, or they're getting, I think, made more efficient. Like I was using Google Stitch to just like quickly concept out different variations, where I could be like, make 3 variations, adjust the layout. And this is where Shift Nudge comes into play. Like the vocabulary is like, do 3 variations using a card component, do 3 variations using a data grid, and then do 3 variations playing around with the row height in like 64. I could precisely give it like instructions. And it's almost like I'm watching the Defiant ones right now. It's the documentary about Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine before they sold Beats. And it's awesome. It's like that. And like The Last Dance, like some of the best documentaries I've ever seen. You get pumped watching it. But Jimmy Iovine, like when he was becoming a record producer, his mentor that hired him at the record, I think it's like the record plant or whatever. Like he taught him by working through him. And as Jimmy's like describing how he's getting coached, it's basically he's Claude, the agent, and then his mentor is just, all right, adjust the reverb.
Yeah.
Okay, what happened there? What did you see? Like, why did that work? Why did not work? And he's okay. Now max out the echo. Oh, that doesn't sound good. What's happening there? Dial it down like 2 points. Okay, what do you hear now? And it's the master apprentice model, and I feel like that's where things are going.
Yeah, it really is. And I think it's just really interesting because you still need that like institutional knowledge, the vocabulary. Sure, AI can adjust the reverb and adjust the echo and adjust the panning and the beat. Oh, you want 5 different beats?
But how much?
But it's like, why? Why not? How much? When do we stop and we like hit the beat and then you're expecting something? And that creativity, I think it can be done with AI, but I think there's going to be, in the same way that there was like a big resurgence of live in-person things after COVID, I think we're all going to be like, it's just refreshing when I read something online and I can tell that a human wrote it. And it's not, but here's the thing, blah, 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 blah. You can almost, it's just, there's so many tells for someone who didn't change their AI produced copy. And I use AI for so many things, including like producing first drafts of things and helping me generate ideas. But there's just something so refreshing about hearing it come from someone's brain versus knowing it was just garbled together. And I think at the same time, we're like advancing, and maybe that will be solved for the most part, but it is just having a conversation with someone and knowing it was a real video instead of an AI clone or whatever, or a generative thing, is going to be valuable, I think, in the future. And so, yeah, it's easy to let your mind wander into dreaded apocalypse or, oh, this is actually pretty cool. And tech has always displaced jobs no matter when. Like, I was just reading an article the other day about how the sewing machine was like banned initially because they were going to put the hand knitters out of jobs, and the guy had to move to another country, and it ended up being his brother that brought it back. And that ended up creating a bunch of other jobs. And maybe some people are still doing things a certain way, but generally speaking, most advancements have created more jobs. A lot of people, even using Claude Code to run 20 agents overnight, are talking about how they're busier than ever. Like they've never been more busy. Maybe they're more productive, but I think that unfortunately tech does displace certain jobs, but it also creates others. And whatever your stance is on AI, because I've definitely encountered some people on my email list who have told me exactly what they think about AI and polluting water sheds and displacing communities. And I'm like, I'm not as informed as you are apparently on a lot of these matters. But I'm looking at the world as it exists now. I'm observing what is happening. Facebook, X, Apple, Claude, ChatGPT, OpenAI, all these companies, Figma, they're Google, every company, every major tech company is implementing AI, just factually. And there's nothing I can do about that. Like, it's just going to happen. And I can either just go move to the woods and build a cabin and live off the grid, which actually sounds appealing, or I can just accept this reality and try to figure out how to navigate this very real future that I can see. Present, it's not even future, it's present and future, and try to learn how to adapt. And who knows where that will lead, but that's my closing AI soapbox stance here.
Yeah, like it's very, I think, unsettling. And I burned a lot of. I'm at a point in my career, like maybe if I like moved it 10 years before, right, where like people usually get like comfortable because like I guess you have your skill files trained in your brain where you could repeat outputs and you could technically sit back. It's been the most interesting but uncomfortable growth here because it's this okay, I need to get oriented really fast.
Yeah.
But I think the example, if I were to like tie up a loose end, the example you gave of someone being like, the people that say, oh, like software is cooked. Yeah, it's usually they're not like builders. They're finance people that like to go on Robinhood is like my assumption, because I don't want to build all my tools. I'm happily paying Descript for my like this studio software. Like I don't want to maintain
I don't
this.
want to rely on your janky vibe coded app to help me do a certain thing.
Yeah. Like the easy follow question for anybody I did this with AI. I'm like, okay, cool. So what's your plan to maintain it? And they won't have an answer because they're like, oh, wait. And then you realize why we pay engineers a lot of money. It's so that the train keeps running. Like DevOps, infrastructure, like support tickets. All these PMs making, I could build my own products. And then I'm like, cool. Are you going to do the support tickets too? No, I'm a big picture guy. It's like, I think like my current soapbox is I'm actually trying to get my algorithms outside of tech now.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, the cost of building things has gone down. Now it's more of a like function of like, what do we build? Why do we build it? Why do we build it that way? Why do we position it like in the market this way? And I'm like trying to read more marketers. I guess I'm like going back to like liberal arts, like humanities education feed, because I feel like people that just have, I'm repeating the echo chamber, but like everyone with taste is not in tech right now. That's my point. Matt, do you feel like there's anything that hasn't been said that should be said before we sign off?
I think for anyone navigating the new world of AI, because I think that's what's a lot on top of everyone's mind. New tools. What do I need to do? What does this mean for my career? I think it's really easy to project things into the future and catastrophize our certain situation or what we find lacking. But I think a lot of people find themselves, we're at the ground level of using AI now. And maybe there's going to be developers who are a little more savvy with using it to wrangle code than like a new person who is new to generating code. But that traditional developer may not be any better at design, and you have a unique skill set. Or if you find yourself lacking in a skill set, build that vocabulary through any means possible, whether it's asking questions from AI while you're learning or watching videos or whatever, attending school. I think there's still real value in building your own brain. You're going to need your own knowledge. But I also think it's really important to know that, the landscape is what it is. And so you have to, do you feel comfortable being a builder now? And if so, spend a portion of your time learning the new tools and learning how to apply what you already know to those new tools. And if you feel like you have a deficiency in make the moves to build your skills so that you're better at using the tools. And if you don't want to do it, maybe you change careers. I don't know. And so I think you just need to plot yourself. Are you a pioneer? Are you going to be a builder? Or are you just going to be a consumer? Because either way, I think your AI is going to be touching a part of your life, whether you choose to or not. My mom is a good example. She's not choosing to have AI in her life. She's just seeing it happen through Amazon review summaries or Google AI summaries for the things that she used to search for. And then also trying to decide, a lot of us are not going to be working on the intelligence portion. We're not building new AI models like Opus or Codex or whatever. And then a lot of us may not necessarily feel like there's the intelligence piece, and then there's the harness, and then there's like the surface, like we're interacting with V0 or Lovable. And so there's like Cursor and Claude Code. There's like their own harness and a surface that you can interact with it. And then some that are maybe Lovable is a good example of like much more surface focused, but they do have a back end harness that you can't really get into. Whereas like Claude Code is so appealing because it gives you a little bit of everything, but just like understanding like, where am I approaching AI from, and what kind of persona do I imagine myself being? If I'm going to be just surface entry point as a builder, then maybe I'm using more like web-based tools, and command line kind of scares me. But if I'm really interested in diving deeper, I want to be a mid-tier builder in terms of like full developer versus designer, and I'm willing to learn, then okay, then go that way. And maybe your career path will allow you to explore that, or where you're at, what you're learning. I think, but that's been my kind of focus is like to map this out. What exists here? Here's the structural pieces. Here are the persona pieces. How can we plot our own course here and feel a little bit more confident, feeling, okay, I've plotted myself here. This is what I'm going to start learning, versus drinking from the fire hose. I got to learn like 40 new tools every single week. And oh my gosh, AI is doing this. And oh, did you see? Oh, now this industry's dead. And so if you're just drinking from the fire hose, it's easy to feel discouraged. But if you just take a step back and plot out where you want to be on that spectrum, and then just know, okay, this is where I'm at. This is where I'm trying to go. Make some decisions along the way. And that makes it a little bit more comforting knowing that there's still problems to be solved. People still like to interact with and use cool, useful products. And if that's a part of what you've done as your career, keep doing it and just inch your way towards more efficient tool usage.
Yeah, and I'll just do the plug for you. I was going to ask you, but I will give an endorsement. If you want to be relevant in design, Shift Nudge is a good investment. Like I've already been like like to your point about vocabulary, I've been like slowly rewatching the lessons because I'm like, oh, I need to like get my vocabulary like dialed in, because even if like you're not like drawing the icons yourself, you know what good looks like because you have the vocabulary. And for people worried about the environment and stuff, then you should definitely just be a customer of Claude, because it's the most ethical AI company, because the most pollution's happening from like these video and image generation like agents, and Claude doesn't optimize for image generation. So if you want to feel better about yourself, do Claude. But yeah, I think that's really great. Like, Matt, you'll figure it out. And when you do, I'm going to steal every good idea, because I'm worried about juniors. I'm like, okay, what does AI grunt work look like? Because we need to get grunt work back. Maybe it's a higher level of grunt work. Maybe it's like the grunt work's now like senior work or something. I don't know. It's like, yeah, that's the one thing I'm like, that's on my mission right now. Is like, how do I figure out like what the junior job looks like now? And
yeah, and there may be a future in where, a lot of the tool usage is so easy to handle it. It might be more like, okay, here's someone who's been in it for a while, and here's someone who's younger. It's okay. Now tell it to make a drop shadow. Okay. Why does that look off? Okay. The blur's too big. It looks fuzzy around the edges. Now have it dial it back down. Install this skill file. There's so many things that you're not going to know how to do as a junior necessarily. Or why does the shadow look weird? Why do these colors vibrate against each other? I think there's just, anyway, we could keep going on and on, but yeah. I think that having that pair of institutional knowledge and tool usage is going to be super valuable.
All right, Matt, thank you so much for coming on the show. You have a good one.
Thank you so much, Caden. I appreciate it.